Why do some people remain calm in the eye of life's greatest storms while others are swept away by the smallest gusts of adversity? What invisible anchor keeps certain souls steady when everything around them crumbles? Is serenity a gift reserved for the fortunate few? Or does every heart contain a sanctuary of peace waiting to be discovered, even when the world feels like it's falling apart? Hello, everyone. Welcome to Universal Life Stories. Today's story reveals a secret that transforms how we experience life's most challenging moments. You might be drowning in chaos right now without realizing there's solid ground beneath your feet. This ancient wisdom could be the lighthouse that guides you home to yourself. While listening to this story, we will uncover timeless truths about inner peace that you can access starting today. So stay with us till the end. In the heart of a metropolitan emergency room worked a nurse named Maria. She was compassionate and skilled and had dedicated 15 years to healing others during their darkest hours. But recently, Maria's own life had become a hurricane of overwhelming challenges. Her mother was battling cancer, requiring constant care and expensive treatments. Her teenage son had fallen into troubled company, coming home at all hours with eyes that no longer recognized her love. Her marriage, once a source of strength, had become a battlefield of silent resentments and exhausted conversations about money, time, and responsibilities that felt impossible to balance. Each morning, Maria would arrive at the hospital feeling like she was drowning before her shift even began. The emergency room, with its constant chaos of trauma and urgency, had once felt manageable because she could focus entirely on others' needs. Now, the screaming sirens, frantic families, and endless stream of human suffering felt like amplifications of the chaos in her own heart. She found herself snapping at colleagues, feeling overwhelmed by simple decisions, and going home each night more depleted than a dry well in the desert. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening during what the staff grimly called a multiple trauma night. 3 car accidents had arrived simultaneously, followed by a heart attack, a drug overdose, and a child with severe burns. The emergency room erupted into controlled chaos, with doctors shouting orders, monitors beeping urgently, and family members crying in waiting areas. Maria felt her chest tighten, her breathing become shallow, and her hands begin to shake as she tried to start in 4 on a critical patient. For the first time in her career, Maria had to excuse herself and rush to the supply closet, where she slid down the wall and sobbed quietly among boxes of medical supplies. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was surrounded by tools designed to heal others while feeling completely broken herself. As tears streamed down her face, she whispered a prayer she hadn't spoken since childhood, asking for strength she no longer believed she possessed. When Maria finally composed herself and returned to the floor, she noticed something that would change her perspective forever. Dr. Chen, a veteran emergency physician known for his unshakable calm, was sitting quietly in a corner of the break room during a brief lull in the chaos. His eyes were closed, his hands rested gently in his lap, and his breathing was so steady and peaceful that he seemed to exist in a completely different reality than the mayhem surrounding them. Curious, Maria approached him after the crisis had passed. "Dr. Chen, how do you stay so calm when everything is falling apart?" she asked, expecting some practical advice about stress management or professional detachment. Instead, Dr. Chen smiled with the warmth of someone who had discovered a precious secret and was willing to share it freely. "Maria," he said softly, "I learned something many years ago from my grandmother, who survived wars and famines but never lost her inner peace. She taught me that chaos is not something that happens to us. It's something that happens around us. The storm and the eye of the storm are 2 different places, even though they exist in the same weather system. Dr. Chen explained that his grandmother had been a devout Buddhist who practiced meditation not as an escape from reality, but as a way of finding the unchanging truth within changing circumstances. She had taught him that every person carries within them a space of perfect stillness, like a deep lake that remains calm regardless of how violent the surface waves become. The key was learning to identify with the depths rather than the surface, to anchor consciousness in the peaceful center rather than being tossed about by external conditions. That night, Maria drove home through the city lights, Dr. Chen's words echoing in her mind. She had always thought of peace as something that required perfect conditions, quiet environments, resolved problems, and harmonious relationships. The idea that peace could exist independently of circumstances felt revolutionary, like discovering that she had been searching for something in distant lands that had been in her backpack all along. When she arrived home to find her son still out past curfew and her husband asleep in front of the television while her mother called from the bedroom, needing help, Maria felt the familiar surge of overwhelming responsibility. But this time, instead of immediately reacting with frustration or despair, she paused. She stood in her living room and took 3 deep breaths, imagining herself sinking down through layers of worry and anxiety to find the still place Dr. Chen had described. To her amazement, something shifted. The chaos around her remained exactly the same, but her relationship to it had fundamentally changed. She helped her mother with patient tenderness, gently woke her husband to talk about their son, and when her teenager finally arrived home, she met his defensive attitude with calm curiosity rather than angry accusations. Nothing external had improved, yet everything felt more manageable. Over the following weeks, Maria began what she privately called her stillness practice. Each morning before work, she would sit quietly for 10 minutes, not trying to solve problems or make plans, but simply resting in the awareness that existed beneath her thoughts and emotions. She discovered that this awareness was like the sky, vast, unchanging, and completely unaffected by whatever clouds might pass through it. The practice began to transform how she experienced her work. When trauma cases arrived, Maria found she could maintain her compassion and professional skills while remaining anchored in inner calm. She noticed that her presence had a settling effect on panicked patients and family members, as if her inner peace created permission for others to find their own center in the midst of crisis. At home, the challenges remained substantial, but Maria's responses became increasingly wise and measured. When her mother had difficult days, Maria offered comfort without absorbing the suffering as her own burden. When her son continued his rebellious phase, she maintained boundaries with love rather than reactivity. When her husband struggled with work stress, she listened with presence rather than immediately trying to fix his problems. The transformation wasn't magical or instantaneous. There were days when Maria felt swept away by old patterns of overwhelm and reactivity. But each time she remembered Dr. Chen's grandmother's teaching about the eye of the storm, she could find her way back to the place of peace that existed independently of her circumstances. One evening, about 6 months into her practice, Maria experienced what Buddhist teachers might call a moment of profound awakening. Her mother was having a particularly difficult night, in pain and frightened about her prognosis. Her son had called from the police station, needing to be picked up after a minor but concerning incident. Her husband was working late again, leaving her to handle everything alone. As Maria sat in her car outside the police station, waiting for her son to be processed, she felt the familiar invitation to spiral into overwhelm and victimhood. But instead of accepting that invitation, she closed her eyes and sank into the deep stillness that had become her refuge. In that moment of complete surrender, she experienced something extraordinary, a profound sense of gratitude for the opportunity to love and serve others, even in difficult circumstances. She realized that she had been unconsciously believing that peace required the absence of problems, when in truth, peace was her natural state that could coexist with any external situation. The challenges in her life hadn't disappeared, but they had been transformed from obstacles to opportunities for practicing love, patience, and wisdom. When her son emerged from the police station, expecting anger or disappointment, he found instead a mother whose eyes held both accountability and unconditional love. The conversation that followed in the car became a turning point in their relationship, not because Maria had perfect words, but because she spoke from the place of inner calm that made real communication possible. Months later, when new nurses joined the emergency room staff, they would often ask Maria how she maintained such grace under pressure. She would smile and share what Dr. Chen's grandmother had taught her, that peace is not the absence of chaos, but the presence of an inner sanctuary that remains untouched by external storms. Maria learned to teach others what she had discovered, that every person has access to this place of stillness, regardless of their circumstances or spiritual background. Whether someone called it meditation, prayer, or simply taking conscious breaths, the practice remained the same. Learning to identify with the awareness that observes experience rather than the experiences themselves. Her life circumstances continued to present challenges. Her mother's cancer journey had difficult chapters. Her son's path to maturity included several detours, and her marriage required ongoing attention and care. But Maria had discovered that she could be fully present to all of it from a place of inner stability that no external circumstance could disturb. The greatest gift of her transformation was watching how her peace became contagious. Patients in the emergency room began commenting on the unusual sense of calm they felt in her presence. Her family members started seeking her out during their own moments of crisis, drawn to the sanctuary of stillness she had learned to embody. Colleagues began asking for her perspective during difficult situations, recognizing that she had access to wisdom that went beyond professional training. Years later, when Maria reflected on the night she had broken down in the supply closet, she felt deep gratitude for that moment of complete overwhelm. It had been the gateway to discovering her greatest strength, the unshakable peace that had been waiting patiently within her all along. She understood now what mystics throughout history had tried to communicate, that every human being carries within them a space of perfect peace that cannot be disturbed by any external circumstance. This peace is not something we must create or achieve. It is our natural state, temporarily obscured by the habit of identifying with our thoughts, emotions, and circumstances rather than the awareness that witnesses them all. Finding peace in chaos, Maria learned, is not about changing what happens to us, but about remembering who we truly are beneath what happens to us. When we anchor our identity in the still center rather than the spinning circumstances, we discover that we have always been safe, whole, and infinitely capable of meeting whatever life presents with grace, wisdom, and unshakable love. If this story resonates with your heart, give it a like and share your thoughts in the comments below. What helps you find peace when life feels chaotic? How do you reconnect with your inner sanctuary? Your insights might be the light that guides someone else through their storm. Subscribe to Universal Life Stories for more transformative tales that awaken the wisdom within. Until next time, remember that peace is not a place you go. It's who you are when you stop running from where you already stand.